Good morning, America. Welcome to RSBN Live, our live desk that is your go-to here on this Friday, October 24th, 2025. It also happens to be day 24 of the government lockdown, brought to you by none other than Senator Chuck Schumer of New York, the Empire State, more like the Palestinian senator in this country, as he's turned his back on Israel, as he's really turned his back on common sense, ultimately, over the course of what was once an honorable tenure. So the problem with people that have been in Congress since 1981, and that's really that age-old argument that we're experiencing. Are we in a time of an imperial presidency, as some have said, since roughly Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan, or, and that's because of the use of executive orders, or is it the people who have been in Congress for 40, 50 plus years? Someone like Senator Chuck Schumer, who has been there since 1981, who is bankrolling all claims and showing his poker hand on not receiving that primary from the far left radical base of his party, with AOC, who could easily primary him in 2028. So as we covered the latest from the Trump White House, we covered the latest inside and outside of the Beltway right here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. It's always a fantastic time to be with you patriots that nearly 1 year ago to the day, we'll be celebrating very soon on that November 5th, 2024, restoring constitutional Republican government, and not just the form of the Republican Party, but Republican in law and order, that all are equal under the law, and that checks and balances once again restored in this country. We also might have the unique opportunity of seeing Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, later today. There is a stake out there outside of her office. See if she has any comments regarding the charges up against her. And many of these investigators have now become the investigated, whether it be the Attorney General in New York or former FBI Director James Comey. Seems as if they are actually guilty of what they were trying to charge President Trump with. But that's what's the beautiful thing in this country. You're innocent before proven guilty. So we'll watch all of that up in New York State. And that's what's happened to the Democrat Party, running on Get Trump, to quote them, whether it be law enforcement agents in the form of district attorneys to attorneys general, and even some judges who choose to create lawfare and release people back into society and out of a system when they actually should be there, perhaps in jail. As we're getting a live look there outside of the courthouse in New York State. We'll see if Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, has any comments regarding her specific case. So if we rewind back to what took place, it was President Trump. She accused of bringing this to state court that Mar-a-Lago was devalued roughly at $18 million. Of course, you look at it, and Eric Trump, who, by the way, is the number one best-selling book out there, Under Siege, an extraordinary read on what the Trump family has gone through and lawfare in general in the United States. And we've seen this against the Cuomo family. We've seen this against Rod Blagojevich. It's not unique just to Republicans in office, but even some Democrats who seek to do the right thing or go against the matrix, go against the so-called establishment of what we've seen in the deep state and their influences outside of the federal city. It really does not matter so much R or D next to your name, but rather it's we the people versus a global big state bureaucracy, a deep state that seeks to usurp the authority of the American people that we have over our government. And that is all changing in this administration, perhaps even bigger and bolder and better than it did in the first. So we'll watch all of that. But she claims that Letitia James, Mar-a-Lago is worth $18 million, and Eric Trump doing countless interviews recently saying you can look at this beautiful, extraordinary architectural landmark and design of the Kellogg fortune, and Miss Merriweather, who was the heir of that extraordinary property, who once wanted to be a presidential retreat, and she ended up getting her wish with that when President Trump purchased it in 1985, but clearly worth much, much more. It's an extraordinary Spanish architecture, a home unlike really any other in the United States that harkens back to European design, some of the finest in the entire world. So as we watch all of this happening with Miss James, as she's now accused of what she was accusing President Trump of doing, including having multiple properties, mortgage fraud, again, innocent before proven guilty. We will watch this case extraordinarily closely. As President Trump mentioned yesterday during a drug cartel meeting with his national security team, just the amazing numbers coming out of the FBI, the Department of Justice, in conjunction with the Pentagon, in order to make America safe again against these drug cartels that seek to do harm and kill countless thousands of Americans, that Adam Schiff of California, the shifty senator from the Golden State, really one of the worst people in American politics, who brought this Russia hoax to the forefront. And if it was not for former Congressman Devin Nunes and now FBI Director Kash Patel, we would not have known the depths of the Russia hoax, the dirty dossier, and what the Hillary Clinton campaign attempted to do in the spying of the Trump Tower during 2016, but also the entire Obama administration, especially someone like James Comey and John Brennan behind this operation in order to usurp the authority of the American people. It's a scandal unlike any other. And if Watergate bothers you, the Russia hoax should be 10 times worse, as we cover the latest from the Trump White House. And President Trump is going on a rather large trip over the next week, heading to Malaysia first. He will be leaving this evening, and then by the time he touches down in Malaysia, it will be Sunday morning local time. That will culminate in the leadership of Malaysia and also Cambodia and Thailand having a joint bilateral meeting and signing of the peace accord and trade deals with both kingdoms and their prime ministers of Cambodia and Thailand. Then it's on to South Korea to meet with the president, and also Japan to meet with the new prime minister, who has really ramped up deportations of illegal aliens in her own country as well, ultimately leading to a meeting with the Chinese Communist Party Premier Xi Jinping. So it's an Asian tour that will be one for the making, extraordinarily famous in what is signed on to in regards of peace and trade, and really a new Indo-Pacific where the United States influence is perhaps stronger than ever through the use of tariffs, also through the use of global diplomacy. So we'll watch that closely over the course of the next week. Get your popcorn ready, because it will be really an amazing time to watch this president do what he does best, in addition to the meeting with Xi Jinping, one that was extraordinary, looking forward to that, because these tariffs, the use of them, have really put the Chinese Communist Party on the brink, their backs against the rope. So we'll watch that one extraordinarily closely, as Canada has clearly cheated when it comes to what's taken place with their propaganda machine out of Ontario, Canada. In fact, number three, Mr. Producer, the Reagan Foundation, speaking out against the government of Ontario, Canada, stating that the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and its team has learned that the government of Ontario, Canada, created a campaign using selective audio and video of President Ronald Reagan delivering his radio address to the nation on free and fair trade back on April 25th, 1987. So the ad misrepresents the presidential radio address, and the government of Ontario did not receive permission to use any of the remarks. And the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation is reviewing legal options in this matter. And President Trump adding to that with the very precarious situation by the Canadian government in Ontario. This ad was $75 million. The only thing they did is interfere with the decision by the U.S. Supreme Court and other courts. It's a fake advertisement. Tariffs are very important to the national security and the economy of the United States. Based on their egregious behavior, all trade negotiations with Canada hereby terminated. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So we'll watch that extremely closely because it's really a strange move that Ontario would make to use the 40th president's voice, chop up and not only use it without permission, but try to make something out that did not happen. In fact, during that time frame in 1987, the capitalist president, Ronald Reagan, slapped a 100% tariff on Japan because they were doing what China's doing in present day, manipulating their currency on a global scale. And he said an absolute no to that as that took place over the course of the last 40 years. So something to watch there historically. President Ronald Reagan, someone who used tariffs when it was needed. Thank you to allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. 10% off now. Tamiflu, ivermectin, antibiotics, antivirals, much, much more. 200 essential medications. You can scan that QR code there now for 10% off of these life-saving meds, including NAD+, methylene blue. Prepare for cold and flu season at allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. It's no red tape. It's no bureaucracy. If you don't have insurance, there's no worries at all, which is a good thing these days. You have a pharmaceutical note, and that's all you need. And our doctors and pharmacists there at allfamilypharmacy.com, happy to talk options with you. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Again, code RSBN for 10% off these life-saving medications as we cover the latest inside and outside of the Beltway. It is always good to check in with certain secretaries in the cabinet, including people like Lee Zeldin, the EPA administrator, who is really doing an outstanding job not only to cut the bloat and bureaucracy out of that agency, because leftists have used it as weaponization for countless terms and years in other administrations, both Republican and Democrat. And number 8, Mr. Producer, the Trump EPA is cleaning up all of that inside the Beltway and actually providing for clean air and clean water throughout the United States.
Concerned Americans have urgent and important questions about geoengineering and contrails. The American public deserves and expects honesty and transparency from their government when seeking answers. But for years, people who asked questions in good faith were dismissed, even vilified by the media and their own government. That era is over. The Trump EPA is committed to total transparency. As a result, I tasked my team at EPA to compile a list of everything we know about contrails and geoengineering for the purpose of releasing it to you now publicly. In other words, I want you to know everything I know about these topics and without any exception. Instead of simply dismissing these questions and concerns as baseless conspiracies, we're meeting them head on. We did the legwork, looked at the science, consulted agency experts, and pulled in relevant outside information to put these online resources together. Everything we know about contrails to solar geoengineering will be in there. That means anyone who reads through this information will know as much about these topics as I do as EPA administrator. To anyone who's ever looked up to the streaks in the sky and asked, what the heck is going on? Or seen headlines about private actors and even governments looking to blot out the sun in the name of stopping global warming? We've endeavored to answer all of your questions at the links on your screen. In fact, EPA shares many of the same concerns when it comes to potential threats to human health and the environment, especially from solar geoengineering activities. The enthusiasm for experiments that would pump pollutants into the high atmosphere has set off alarm bells here at the Trump EPA. Prior to now, EPA has never been this proactive to raise awareness about concerns with geoengineering and to stop this activity from being scaled up. This is what it looks like when government actually listens to the will of the people and doesn't try to squash it. You can always trust this administration and this EPA to take your concerns seriously, answer your questions honestly, and carry out the will of voters with integrity.
Good to have common sense back at the EPA, and nice to see that everyone wants clean air and water. Why did the left hijack that movement and then make things even worse? So Lee Zeldin doing an extraordinary job as the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, an agency which was started under the Nixon administration. It's funny how the left grabs hold of these things when the conservation, I mean, really the essence of conservative is conservation. Think of Teddy Roosevelt, you think of Nixon, you can add Trump to that list of people who want clean air and water. It's common sense. Thank you to Monetary Gold. It's wealth preservation, securities. It's all about retirement, your pensions, everything you worked hard for. That belongs to you. Now, silver, gold, going into a bull market. I mean, really skyrocketing unlike ever before. In 5,000 years of human history, gold and silver have always been a go-to regardless of a nation's currency. And with 196 nations out there, and BRICS nations specifically, that want to weaken the dollar on a global scale, no better time than now to stock up on gold and silver, just like the banks are. So grab your complimentary presidential gold guide today. Call today. Do not delay. Ask how you can eliminate your annual IRA fees permanently for life at 888-617-7994. It's RSBNforthegold.com. Yes, RSBNforthegold.com. Robert Kiyosaki, friend of President Trump, also the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the story of why and how the rich teach their children about generational wealth and money management that the middle class and the poor do not. This brilliant man talking about 2 banks failing just this year alone, nearly 500 during the Obama administration, and roughly around 16 between the first and now second administrations of President Trump. So regardless of who's in office, it's smart to have that gold and silver as a backup, again, for generational wealth or perhaps buying that first or second property. Monetary Gold is the best in the business. It's RSBNforthegold.com. Wealth, security, preservation. Grab the complimentary presidential gold guide today. No 2 plans are the same, but definitely needed in this bull market for hot commodities such as gold and silver. Thank you for sponsoring us on the right side of history. As the administration works overtime for the American people, President Trump cut 5, Mr. Producer, in case you missed it, holding really a national security summit of extraordinary cabinet members, including the Department of Justice with Attorney General Pam Bondi, FBI Director Kash Patel, to the Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem. Also, Susie Wiles, the Chief of Staff there, with Secretary of War Pete Hegseth detailing the amazing accomplishments over the course of this year alone, since January 20th, and taking that oath of office. But in the meantime, Democrats losing it, the 24th day now of a government shutdown.
I think the Democrats have gone totally crazy, and you don't know what they're going to do because they don't care about the people. They don't. I really think they have no leadership. They have a lot of very low IQ people. Jasmine Crockett is a low IQ person. A lot of them are. I don't want to insult too many of them, but a lot of them are. They have no rudder. I don't think they know what they're doing right now. You know, they've never done this before. They always agreed to go and, called an extension. Let's do an extension and talk. Even today, look at what happened today. They don't want to pay the people that have worked. And, this was supposed to be this was a test. and they wouldn't pay the people that have been working. They said, no, we don't want to pay them. This is all the Democrats. Now, all we need is 5 Democrats. And I know a lot of Democrats that are saying there are more than 5. Probably not that many more than 5, but there are more than 5. And all we need is like 5 Democrat votes, so we open our country again. Sad, though, we have the greatest economy in our history. We have the highest stock market. All these things are rocking. We will have, by the end of my first year, more than $20 trillion of investment. The all-time record is $3 trillion. I think it's China. We're going to have $20 or $21 trillion. We've never had anything like it coming in because of tariffs. The money pouring into our country, the plants that are opening, AI, automobiles, everything. And the Democrats want to close our country. They're really, they say deranged. They are. They suffer. I guess it's Trump derangement syndrome, which I think is going down now as an official condition by the doctors. I think they get paid extra money if they handle it because it's more difficult to handle than a normal mental disease. But you know what? They really should approve an extension, get the country back to work, get the people paid. And, it's very simple. You just don't know what's going on. There's something wrong with them. Yeah, it's sad, actually.
And President Trump really speaking out against the Democrats yesterday regarding this Chuck Schumer shutdown. So we'll watch that closely as if any other comments from the House Speaker or GOP leadership, we'll bring that to you. But it's really become somewhat of a broken record because it's very clear that what the House passed was a clean CR for 7 weeks to keep the government open. And at risk of sounding like a broken record myself, Senator Schumer and his Democrats sticking together, and surprisingly, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky joining them, the Commonwealth. Now, you have to give a lot of credit to Mr. Fetterman of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. He does not want to keep the government locked down. He's been doing a whirlwind of interviews, speaking on this topic that he will always put his country first, and he's pro-Israel, and the most extreme radical voices in his country simply will not determine where he stands on specific votes. And right here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, we definitely respect something like that, and the leadership, and someone who will break away from the oligarchy, as crazy Bernie Sanders puts it, of the Democrat Party that controls their people. As President Trump says, the only thing he really admires of the Democrats, they stick together, but that lonely island that Senator John Fetterman is on is one to be respected because the Democrat Party was once for the little guy, per se, and made sure that it would keep in checks and balances with those wealthiest Americans. Well, they've really turned away from that altogether. And as we watch that developing in this day and age, it's day 24 of a government shutdown that is rather ridiculous at this point. And it's those who rely on these public employee paychecks. I was through the airports yesterday and the day before, Hartsfield-Jackson, Chicago O'Hare. The x-ray machines seem to be shut down. I was asking some questions. TSA was not very open to answering those questions, but again, some of them aren't the most friendly at Chicago O'Hare or Atlanta, if you've been through both of those airports. But the magnetometers were on, but the other ones were closed off. Could that be part of the shutdown? Perhaps. Perhaps we'll have someone on to speak on that specifically. But President Trump also addressed in Cut 20, Mr. Director, a question on the mail-in ballots. And where do we move forward with this? Because it's been on the forefront of the minds of countless voters on both sides of the aisle. And throughout my career, I've seen people take different things to court, especially when I was covering local politics in Anchorage, Alaska. They had such close races in Anchorage as a result of their rank choice voting. And with all of that, there's a process of going back, recounting, then doing it again over and over and over. If you're unfamiliar with ranked choice, you can actually literally rank your preference. So it dilutes the yes or no, this person or the other. In theory, it makes sense as it becomes someone elected who is more representative of the people, like an argument for a fairer democracy. But what it ultimately does is create a vacuum for fraud, for deceit, for confusion especially. And I saw that on a regular basis with the municipal clerk up in Anchorage, Alaska, who was not necessarily the most forthright in regards to the process. It was actually a very interesting story that was covered because both sides of the aisle were complaining that they were not being well served, that their constituents, their voters, were somehow had elections stolen from them. And this is post 2020. This is the 2021 into 2022 season. So as we watch all of that, it's important that this is curbed somehow. To have paper balloting makes sense. France has paper balloting. Countless other countries do paper balloting. And then if you have a reason for the mail-in, say military, there you have it. Kalshi.com/RSBN. Will Bitcoin hit that 150 mark before March or February, even January, upcoming, just a couple months away? Will Andrew Cuomo make a comeback of which is not nearly anything like President Trump, but still to be the ousted former governor of the Empire State Democrat turned independent? If you've watched a couple of those debates between Mr. Cuomo and the communist Democrat nominee, Zoran Mamdani, and the Republican nominee, Curtis Sliwa, though, the fireworks are going in true New York City fashion. We'll watch that race closely coming up on November 4th with early voting underway beginning this weekend specifically for New York City. Of course, the Garden State of New Jersey and the Commonwealth of Virginia, two big races happening. And tonight, the World Series begins between the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Toronto Blue Jays. So who will win that great contest? Will the Los Angeles Dodgers defend their championship from last year? Kalshi.com/RSBN. It's everything from sports, music, culture, politics, and much, much more right there at Kalshi.com/RSBN. Thank you to Angel Paste as well. AngelPaste.com, the miracle that is the vitamin B infused original cream. I've used it here on the network. I use it today, and it's really nice this time of year as the air gets dry and you get the cooler temperatures, and sometimes you get the cracked skin as a result of that. And Angel Paste is right there for you with many different options, so explore what they have there at angelpaste.com. The orange miracle cream as well. It's vitamin C infused, non-GMO, no chemicals, a facial spray to paint the town red, whether it is that first date or that 50th wedding anniversary. The miracle that is angelpaste.com keeps delivering to countless people throughout the country. They are Christian-based. They own this wonderful company out of Spring, Texas, off the Gulf of America. In addition to that, they hire veterans. So good people over there at angelpaste.com in the Lone Star State. Experience the miracle today at angelpaste.com. Thank you for sponsoring us on the right side of history. President Trump giving out storm relief to countless different states, including Nebraska to Alaska, also in Missouri, having meeting with several of their governors, either by phone or in the Oval Office over the course of this week. As you mentioned yesterday, during that drug and crime summit there at the White House, and speaking to reporters that you may all go home now, but I am going back to the Oval Office to work. The man is working around the clock, as he has also endorsed with cut number 11, Mr. Producer, the Virginia and New Jersey candidates up and down the ballot, stating that it is the GOP that you should vote for come November 4th, if not early. For all of those people voting in New Jersey and Virginia for governor, attorney general, and any other position, please remember this. A Republican vote means a drastic drop in energy prices, energy costs, and a drop like you've never seen before. A Democrat vote means a doubling, if not tripling, of your energy bills and prices. Traditionally, the highest cost of an American citizen. So if you vote Republican, your energy costs are going to go down tremendously. If you vote for the Democrat, your energy costs are going through the roof, making energy virtually unaffordable for you and your family to pay for. Now, also remember that if you don't go to the polls and vote, it's the same thing as voting for a Democrat. So go to the polls and cut off your energy costs in half. And that's kind of the sad thing about these off-year elections, people don't get involved. I mean, that's why we had in the Voice of Reason someone like Mayor Rusty Paul from Sandy Springs, Georgia, because ultimately the system that we have in our constitutional republic, and especially with constitutional governance that's once back in Washington, D.C., with its limits, with its controls, that you see this president not getting involved in certain issues or wanting to scale back. For example, the revocation of Roe v. Wade at the courts to the process of ending the Department of Education. You now see what modern Republicans and Democrats trying to grip the power from the states and localities. This administration wants to pull back, something government tends not to do. President Ronald Reagan stated that as well, that if there is the closest thing to eternal life on this planet, it is a government program. But this administration going the opposite direction, really fulfilling even the goals and the plans that the Reagan administration were not able to do with as much as they accomplished nearly 40 plus years ago. So we'll watch that very closely as we cover the latest from the Trump White House on this day 24, the government lockdown from Senator Chuck Schumer and his far left base. And it does not seem as if anything will budge, at least temporarily. Hopefully this will be all up and running again, because it's costing billions of dollars on top of the travel season coming up with Thanksgiving and Christmas and Hanukkah, all the holidays that we're about to celebrate in the great home of the free and land of the brave. Home of the brave, land of the free, vice versa. I love America. It's good to be here with you. I'm Robert McNeely. It's Right Side Broadcasting Network's live desk as we cover the latest inside and outside of the Beltway. If you ever want to write in as well, feedback at rsbn.tv. Please feel free to share the good, the bad, and the ugly, as we have someone who is dashing. She's daring. She's our eyes and ears inside and outside of the Beltway, but mostly on Capitol Hill. It's Ashley Brassfield of the Daily Caller. Ashley, you've been working overtime with these Virginia Democrats, admitting that they don't care if kids receive sexually explicit material. I thought they would have learned from the last two elections that, maybe even Democrats will vote Republican in Virginia because of all of the nonsense we've seen, from the Ray FBI going after parents at the school board meetings to literally pornography in K through 12 classrooms and the libraries. I am just shocked at what I've seen over the course of the last few years.
Yeah, absolutely. This election is just highlighting that once again, what happened in 2022 when Glenn Youngkin came from behind really with Terry McAuliffe during that debate, when Terry McAuliffe basically admitted that parents shouldn't have a right to know what's going on in their kids' schools. And so what happened recently, specifically, we've seen the Jay Jones aftermath, Abigail Spanberger not unendorsing Jay Jones, still having merchandise on her website with both their names side by side. But now we have the lieutenant governor candidate, the Democrat, Ghazala Hashmi, who is a Virginia Democrat state senator who's running against Republican candidate John Reed. And during a subcommittee hearing in 2023, when a lot of this was being discussed, whether certain sexually explicit content should be in kids' books and these libraries, if they should be able to check these books out. There was an exchange between a senator and, Ghazala Hashmi basically said that, she's more worried about violence, but instead of the sexually explicit content that was being discussed in these books, which she has a point there, but also why can't you be concerned about both? I think during that time period, especially, and even still now within Virginia, it's a huge issue with parents. But this just shows, I think, the talking points that you're dealing with this Democrat ticket, specifically with all three candidates at this point.
Yes, it's really very strange. Even in Texas, we have the state rep who's running for Congress talking about either cutting necks or throats, making that gesture just like this. I mean, it was rather bizarre to watch on another network. And, of course, that anchor did not push her on that, as House Speaker Mike Johnson has said as well. We have a situation with a J6 individual who is involved with that and exonerated of everything that took place that day, but also threatening Hakeem Jeffries, or alleged to have done so. Of course, the right comes out and says no political violence, period. And House Speaker Mike Johnson has to repeat himself all of the time to the press pool there in Washington, D.C. But we just see that double standard, that liberal privilege that Donald Trump Jr. talked about with many of these Democrat lawmakers. Now, Speaker Johnson also making a pledge this week for the Epstein files. That was somewhat of a newsbreaker given that it's day 24 of the government lockdown. Can you update us with anything regarding that investigation and what might come as a result of this nefarious activity of Epstein and his partners, including Ghislaine Maxwell?
Right. Well, we've seen the House Oversight Committee do their own probe, but we see also Rep. Massey, who's a Republican, partner up with Democrat Ro Khanna on this discharge resolution. And we're waiting on one signature, a Democrat signature, due to a special election that happened in Arizona. She is yet to be sworn in. Speaker Mike Johnson will not allow that to happen until this shutdown is over. So we're waiting on that one signature for this discharge resolution to be able to go to the floor to be voted on. So that's a little bit of the difference between the two and themselves. So that's what the holdup is currently. Of course, we're not in legislative session in the House, so until the shutdown is over, Mike Johnson made that promise. There was a little bit of a question as to whether he would let this go to a floor vote. There is some procedural aspects that could prevent that he could use, but he came out in an interview this week saying he will not prevent that vote. So I think that was really the breaking news aspect here. Of course, Rep. Massey dissenting in a lot of ways. There was only 4 Republicans that have signed on to this discharge resolution. It was Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey, as well as Nancy Mace in South Carolina. So those are the 4 Republicans that have signed on to this discharge resolution. Everyone else is a Democrat.
Oh, very interesting there. It's and do we know why there's this discharge did happen? Is it a way of trying to push things forward a bit? Because it seems as if the House really did their job. And I was slightly surprised that Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's just outstanding on so many things, really seems to be blaming both sides. Because right now, I mean, there could be blame going back to 1998 of so many of these continuing resolutions and the way the House operates, including the Senate as well. But I mean, really, this is in the hands of Senator Chuck Schumer at this point, is it not?
Well, there's an interesting dichotomy with this. I think a lot of people feel that a lot of individuals that are, high up in either party are implicated in this. And I think the American people really just want the transparency here. Not sure we're going to quite get it. Obviously, there's an intelligence aspect to this that we're kind of missing, and who knows if we'll get, but also the aspect of these high-level individuals that could be implicated. And then there's the aspect of protecting the victims. Are the victims telling the truth? There's been some discrepancy there. Alan Dershowitz is actually on Sean Spicer's show kind of talking about that this week. And I think it is an interesting conversation to have. But it is, this aspect of there was a campaign promise that these Epstein files that seem to be not actual files to a certain point. It's a lot of word games going on with this. So I think it is a very interesting story. The part about this that's so much more interesting is the fact that we don't know so much about it, and there is so many questions left unsaid at this point. And I think the American people would really just want to see, transparency on all levels. If we'll get it, that's the remaining question. So I can understand both sides at a certain point protecting individuals from, coming into a mess that's really they shouldn't be into, but also holding individuals responsible here.
And that's why we rely on great journalists like you, Ashley, who I'm sure will end up breaking some big news over the course of the next few months and hopefully not years, because I think we all want justice. Every good-willed, good-minded American who looks at something like child sex trafficking or any kind of labor trafficking, and the curtain's been pulled back, mostly thanks to President Trump and his administration as a result of this. But, even Alan Dershowitz, who I hold highly in regard personally, he said he's seen this list that you said may not necessarily exist. So it's kind of a confusing process. And I understand I want to give the benefit of the doubt to the Attorney General, also to the Director of the FBI, because the President has their full faith and confidence, vice versa. But also you have to let these things play out, because there is this protecting of the victim. And this kind of crime, sadly, can last with someone their entire lives.
Right. And, Alan Dershowitz, was involved in the defense of Jeffrey Epstein in the 2008 plea deal. And I think it is very interesting that he says this in an earlier interview, actually same interview with Sean Spicer, and I think March or February, another interview that's happened in the last few days, talking about how many of these victims have he's saying lied and, are throwing people that are innocent under the bus. So I think there is a dichotomy here of, who's telling the truth. So it makes things a little bit interesting of where the actual truth lies in that scenario. So I think, like you said, good journalism, that's where you're going to find it, and letting the American people analyze both sides.
Right. And ultimately, too, it's regardless of ideology, you follow those breadcrumbs and see where they lie, and we'll bring it right to you, whether it's the Daily Caller or Right Side Broadcasting Network. Now, going over to Maine, so we're shifting up to New England. This farmer's dad somehow found $60,000 to drop on Democrats, despite the working class background. This is an interesting story. So it's Democrat Senate candidate Graham Plantner, who has said some very interesting things over the course of his recent tenure in American politics. But his dad has apparently contributed 60,000 Democrat candidates and causes over time. So, yeah, Maine's an interesting place politically.
Very interesting place. He's challenging Republican Susan Collins for her seat, and she's the incumbent currently. And then Janet Mills is the current governor, and we've seen her name pop up a few times with the president sparring match. And she's running a course to challenge the president, as well as unseating Susan Collins. But she is 77 years old, so she would be a freshman senator at 77 years old. I think that's an interesting aspect. Also backed by Chuck Schumer currently. So make with that what you will. Of course, we call him Maine Mamdani, this Graham Plantner. He's a socialist candidate. He said that himself. But he also likes to say he's a small business owner. He came from humble beginnings, grassroots, has a military background. But we've seen that this story's played out all week. It's been endless, it feels like. And I've heard there's more even coming. But yes, his father, who was an attorney in Ellsworth, Maine, has donated over $60,000 since, I believe, 2011 to 2024, all to Democrat causes. Kamala Harris's campaign, Congressman Jared Golden, as well, who's a Democrat congressman. So it's pretty endless. Jared Golden, of course, and Graham Plantner. He has not endorsed Graham Plantner, but they are very close. They've done visits before prior to Graham announcing his run for Senate. But, there's been a Nazi tattoo scandal, these old Reddit posts that have resurfaced. It's really just endless. And it is this battle that's going on between the establishment Democrats and, your Bernie Sanders endorsed socialist candidate, grassroots aspect to this, that it's very interesting that the Democrat Party is warring over, and it's just, you got to sit back and watch it.
I don't know what's worse, having grown up with the establishment Chicago Democrats who were actually pro-life people, church attending, they were pro-police, but you didn't necessarily see what was behind the screen. But now the replacement of these socialists running in these big cities, I don't know if that's necessarily good either, because they like to spend money even more than your traditional drunken sailor politician of yesteryear. So we'll watch all of that closely. Thank you, Ashley. Also back to the Commonwealth of Virginia. So President Trump was somewhat, I think, selective about specific endorsements. We know Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears was someone who said we need to turn the tide back in 2023. In other words, go away from President Trump. She was leaning more that DeSantis camp, but everything came into harmony as President Trump was clearly the front runner throughout the Republican primary. But she seems as if she's someone who didn't necessarily welcome the president's endorsement, but right now he's generically said Republicans far better than Democrats in New Jersey and Virginia. So what's your take on what's happening in the Commonwealth?
Yeah, well, and a gaggle on Air Force One, you might have seen this, that the president did this endorsement saying that energy is a huge aspect to both the New Jersey election and the Virginia election. And of course, he said, vote for Republicans. He didn't specifically name Winsome Sears, but he said she's the only she on the ticket. So it's pretty obvious who he's talking about, against, her Democrat candidate, Abigail Spanberger. And we saw that gubernatorial debate, major moments happened there. Winsome Sears definitely on the offense. And you could tell Abigail Spanberger could not answer, and he even acknowledged that, whether it would be the trans issue or the Jay Jones issue. So very interesting dichotomy here. It's been a little bit of a late endorsement with the election coming up in just even a few days now. We're on the tail end of this thing. But, with that gubernatorial debate performance from Winsome Sears, plus the endorsement from the president, he had already endorsed the Attorney General Republican candidate, Jason Miyares, pretty early on, especially after the Jay Jones scenario broke out, your typical October surprise at the very beginning of October. So I think it's just a long time coming, and we see this race tightening. I have Winsome Sears saying she's within either 2 points of Abigail Spanberger, or they're neck and neck. So it really is coming down to the nitty gritty here. I think a lot of people had this idea that the New Jersey race was going to be a lot closer, when actually I think Virginia might be just as close at this point with the performances from, all candidates on the Democrat ticket at this point.
And historically low turnout in these off-year elections, but really an important indicator of what can happen in 2026. It's Ashley Brassfield from the Daily Caller, our Capitol Hill eyes and ears, everything in the federal city. Thank you so much, Ashley. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you again soon on the right side of history.
Yes, good to be with you. Thank you.
And as we cover the latest from the Trump White House and Congress as well, 24 days into this government shutdown, we're always happy to be with you here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, as Speaker Johnson will end up holding that press conference. So you look forward to that at 10:45 Eastern. It's 7:45 out on that Golden Coast of California. Thank you to covepure.com/RSBN for sponsoring us on the right side of history, and perhaps no other sponsor more important to your health in regards to that gut health. Remember Flint, Michigan, the lead pipes and all of the poisons that came into the water as a result of Democrat failure on infrastructure. Yes, there are pipes out there in this country older than your grandparents or even your great-grandparents, and lead poisoning can lead to brain cancer, to liver damage, stomach lining issues, and all of the above. So get ahead of it at covepure.com/RSBN and follow in the mission of Secretary Kennedy and Health and Human Services, removing fluoride, pesticides, agricultural runoff, even hormone-disrupting blockers like birth control out of the water. And you might ask, how does that happen? Well, water treatment centers don't always get 100% of the contaminants out of the water after things get flushed down the toilet. So protect what matters most. It's covepure.com/RSBN, $200 off now. Drink pure and live pure. Utah and Florida introducing legislation to remove the impurities out of the water, specifically fluoride. You get enough of that in countless toothpaste products. Why drink it? Because it is ultimately poison. So again, protect what matters most with this machine that's no larger than your coffee maker. I'm sure that's on your kitchen counter. covepure.com/RSBN, the leader in clearwave technology and reverse osmosis systems right here in America. $200 off now. Drink pure, live pure at covepure.com/RSBN. Speaking of healthy, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. 10% off ivermectin, Tamiflu, antibiotics, antivirals, much, much, much more. 200 essential medications, including emergency medical kits. Scan that QR code now and go to the online pharmacy that is making a massive difference to stock up your medicine cabinet. I can't tell you how important it is in cold and flu season to do just that. And also, you could take these life-saving medications with you on the road. No insurance, no issue. Simply life-saving medications brought to you in the nick of time. And doctors and pharmacists who are on the right side of history. Allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. This time of year gets tough because you could have long lines in the urgent care to pharmacies, also the doctor's office. Skip all of that and jump right in with life-saving medications like Tamiflu, ivermectin, NAD+, methylene blue, hydrochloroquine, and some of the options that the local pharmacy down the street might not offer you. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. As we cover everything from the Trump White House. Also, there is an update, no Speaker Johnson press conference, which kind of makes me sad because I like to see the House Speaker on a daily basis along with the House Republican leadership. It reminds me of those times from the first administration, which, as scary as the COVID situation was, remember getting up, having some coffee, and then watching President Trump do a press conference, watching then Governor Andrew Cuomo do his press conference from New York. It's been somewhat similar in these 24 days of lockdown. Let's take a quick commercial break here at Right Side Broadcasting Network for sponsors, but stick with us here as we cover the latest from the Trump White House. I'm Robert McNeely. You're watching Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Tired of being told no by your doctor, your pharmacy, or worse, your insurance company? You're not alone. Millions of Americans are waking up to a broken healthcare system. That's why more and more people are turning to All Family Pharmacy. We believe in medical freedom. We deliver the prescription and the medication, all from licensed U.S. doctors and pharmacists, from ivermectin and trusted antibiotics to maintenance medications, even NAD+, the revolutionary anti-aging supplement. Use code RSBN10 at checkout for 10% off your first order.
Every once in a while, something big happens, something that changes everything. And now, in a defining moment for crypto, Trump Media Group and Crypto.com are joining forces to acquire up to $6.4 billion of CRO, launching America's first ever CRO treasury, empowering the Kronos blockchain. This is more than a partnership. It's the future of finance built in America. For more, visit Crypto.com, where millions trade CRO every day.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
Welcome back to Right Side Broadcasting Network, the latest from the Trump White House. You might ask, what is right there? Well, that's up in New York State, the Empire State. We are potentially awaiting comments from Attorney General Letitia James, who has some various legal woes happening. Ironically, the exact same charges she attempted to bring up against President Trump while he was out of office in a move of lawfare like we have not seen in American history. Roughly 94 different felony counts, whether they be state to federal charges, all being dismissed or thrown out, or simply not guilty of them, as these people campaigned on Get Trump, whether it be Fani Willis in Fulton County, Georgia, all the way up to the Attorney General, Letitia James, and what took place in New York City, ultimately leading President Trump, his family, to vacate full-time, going down to Florida or elsewhere where common sense and true law and order actually reign. And it's frightening to think about. Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, has stated that really conservatives are not welcome in the Empire State, a rather bizarre statement to discriminate simply on ideological and political bias. But we watch all of that as it is October 24th, 2025, and it is day 24 of the government shutdown from another New York Democrat, that being Senator Chuck Schumer, in his very strange attempt to not work with the other side of the aisle. As I've mentioned before, many times in the past years, whether it be 1995, 2008, these other lockdowns, which have been partial lockdowns. We covered lockdowns last night on The Voice of Reason. Blame can go across both the executive and congressional leadership in the legislative branch. But right now, it's clearly on one side, the House leadership putting out that clean CR, that continuing resolution to keep the government open for 7 weeks, to pay essential workers, to pay those at TSA, to military, and a $130 million donation, in case you missed it yesterday, coming into the White House, which will help distribute across the executive branch to fund our military by a very generous donor, including many generous donors to fund the $250 million project of the Grand Ballroom that's taking place right now, breaking ground on the East Wing. And we've seen how the far left has exploded in a fury over it. Rather bizarre, because since 1902, President Teddy Roosevelt and nearly every president since has somehow made their mark, architecturally speaking, on the White House, including Barack Hussein Obama, who put a basketball court in, which I thought was wonderful. I want the presidents to have some R&R, or at least an attempt to beautify the grounds, which are already extraordinary. and none other than this builder and developer, this designer. Everyone mentions it when they go in the Oval Office. Wow, it's more grand than it has ever been, with President Trump and his influence right there in the middle of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And the East and West Wings, really, that's been 100 or so years in the making, much newer additions to the executive office, where it was once the second floor where those administrative offices existed, including the residence as well. So as we look forward to a grand ballroom, it's the golden era of America, and we're grateful that you're here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. I'm Robert McNeely. President Trump touching on mail-in ballots again this week with cut number 20, if that's ready, Mr. Producer, with a question on what are we going to do about this executive orders potentially. We do know that the federal government's suing the state of Illinois over its voter rolls, but because we know more often than not, and it was probably most proven in the last election when the Supreme Court ultimately ruled against the Virginia Supreme Court, the United States, saying that, yes, Governor Youngkin's lawsuit to clean up these voter rolls should move forward, removing roughly 8,000 of illegal voters or ineligible voters from those rolls in Virginia alone, let alone countless states. President Trump commenting on that after a question from a reporter in the Oval Office.
You pushed out on social media about doing away with mail-in ballots and potentially electronic voting machines. Can you expand on that? How
Well, that's a very off topic, just really quickly. Mail-in ballots are corrupt. Mail-in ballots, you can never have a real democracy with mail-in ballots. And we, as a Republican Party, are going to do everything possible that we get rid of mail-in ballots. We're going to start with an executive order that's being written right now by the best lawyers in the country to end mail-in ballots because they're corrupt. And you know that we're the only country in the world, I believe, I may be wrong, but just about the only country in the world that uses them, because of what's happened, massive fraud all over the place. The other thing we want change are the machines. For all of the money they spend, it's approximately 10 times more expensive than paper ballots. And paper ballots are very sophisticated with the watermark paper and everything else. We would get secure elections. We'd get much faster results. The machines, I mean, they say we're going to have the results in 2 weeks. With paper ballots, you have the results that night. Most people, many countries use paper ballots. It's the most secure form. So between paper ballots, very, very important, paper ballots, and I think maybe even more important, the mail-in voting. We're going to end mail-in voting. It's a fraud. If you have mail-in vote, even Jimmy Carter with this commission, they set it up. He said the one thing about mail-in voting, you will never have an honest election if you have mail-in. And it's time that the Republicans get tough and stop it, because the Democrats want it. It's the only way they can get elected. Because with men and women's sports and with transgender for everybody and open borders and all of the horrible things, and now the new thing is they love crime. They're fighting me on the fact that I've made Washington, D.C. safe. We're not going to get mugged, beaten up, or killed like all the people you've been watching get so badly hurt. I'm glad, I hate to take your time in this, but I'm glad you asked me that question. We're going to stop mail-in ballots because it's corrupt. You know, when you go to a voting booth and you do it the right way and you go to a state that runs it properly, you go in, they even ask me, they asked me for my license plate, for identity. I said, I don't know if I have it. He said, sir, you have to have it. I was very impressed, actually. But it's very hard to cheat with mail-in voting. As you know what happens in California, it's so corrupt, where some people get 5, 6, 7 ballots delivered to them. Now, we got to stop mail-in voting, and the Republicans have to lead the charge. The Democrats want it because they have horrible policy. If you have mail-in voting, you're not going to have many Democrats get elected. That's bigger than anything having to do with redistricting, believe me. And the Republicans have to get smart. We're not going to have a country. I said for a long time at rallies, you need borders and you need free and fair elections. Those two things, otherwise you don't have. We have strong borders now. In 90 days, Mr. President, we didn't have 0 in 3 months. Not one person came in illegally into our country. In fact, even I find that hard to believe, but It's run by a little bit of a liberal group that put out the numbers, so I guess it's 0, 0, and 0. You go back a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 millions of people poured into our country. It was terrible. Thank you very much.
President Trump bringing up a great point that if you go to the Jimmy Carter Presidential Museum in Atlanta, Georgia, there's a huge significance of two main points that stuck with me. President Carter was elected first to office as a state senator in Georgia, and this was the 14th district, if I'm not mistaken. I'll double check that for you. All the way down from Plains, Georgia. Ironically, now District 14 is actually in my neck of the woods, Sandy Springs, Dunwoody, that Brookhaven area, just north of Atlanta. Now, what's important about that is there was a very corrupt county commissioner, along with other establishment Democrats of the time, that did not want the outsider, the peanut farmer, to obtain success in office. It was proven in court that that election was rigged, and he was elected a state senator as a result. This is Jimmy Carter, the 39th president. So if that doesn't happen, does he go on to be the governor of Georgia or the president of the United States? And then he went on with the former First Lady Rosalind Carter for the bulk of his long retirement, 50 years or so, fighting for election integrity and real elections in a post-World War II era throughout the world, not only in humanitarian missions to get life-saving medication to these people, in Africa, throughout Europe and Asia. I mean, countless travels as a private citizen or as a special envoy of the State Department, mostly being done, though, through private charities. It's remarkable to think about that the Democrats would not want free and fair elections, given that one of their former presidents fought so hard for it abroad. So I encourage you, take the family to presidential museums in your neck of the woods to learn about recent history. But especially if you're in Atlanta, Georgia, the Jimmy Carter Presidential Museum, it's really quite fascinating, giving the recent narrative of the Democrat Party. As we cover the latest from the Trump White House and Perplexity, thank you for sponsoring us on the right side of history. Unlock 1 month of free Rumble Premium, which you might be watching us from Rumble right now, a great streaming service. Comet is their new AI-powered web browser. It's from Perplexity, so browse at the speed of thought with pplx.ai/RSBN. That's pplx.ai/RSBN. Perplexity, yes, Comet is the way to go. So you save time and energy searching for countless things. How much time? It's a rhetorical question now. How much time do you waste online searching and booking and managing reservations and just so many other things, whether it be business or pleasure? Well, save that time with a personal web assistant literally right there in your web browser. Again, from Perplexity, it's Comet. You work on the East Coast and your business partner might be on the West Coast. Do you want to meet in Texas for some great barbecue? Well, as you prep for that big conference coming up, have peace of mind with the Comet that will literally search for that best barbecue and then book all that reservation, send it over to your business partner, and then you have no hassle, no worry. Done in seconds rather than 30 minutes or a couple of hours. You don't have the time to waste. So Comet, a huge assistance. If you're going to be in the Dallas area, go to Copel, Texas, and there's a Hard 8. That's my favorite barbecue. So maybe you don't need Comet for that specific reason, but if you're looking elsewhere, Comet is the way to go. Unlock 1 month freemium of the Rumble. Free premium Rumble. It's a great deal there at pplx.ai/RSBN. And Monetary Gold, it's wealth and preservation, securities, retirement, everything you worked hard for with your pension or however your income came about. But you can't just rely on paper money and inflation, although I have a good report right after this segment. Grab your complimentary presidential gold guide today. Heed the warning of Robert Kiyosaki, author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And why not grab the free presidential gold guide with that handsome gentleman on the front, number 45 and 47. Call today. Do not delay. Ask how you can eliminate your IRA fees permanently for life. 888-617-7994. RSBN4thegold.com. It's RSBN4thegold.com. And that is the place to be. If you caught that interview yesterday with the great David Schroeder, detailing how gold and silver in a bull market, banks buying up gold, by hordes right now, and it's one of the highest values it's been in 5,000 years of human history. So diversify that income for generational wealth or simply buying that first or second property. RSBN4thegold.com. Thank you for sponsoring us on the right side of history. As the White House is sending out an email regarding inflation and reporting that it remains low as the Democrat shutdown threatens progress in day 24. Now, Caroline Leavitt, the superstar, the White House press secretary, stating inflation came in below market expectations in September thanks to President Trump's economic agenda. This is good news for American families, and it's a shame that the Democrats are using them as leverage to fund health care for illegal aliens. Full stop, because it's 100% true. Democrats choosing to keep the government closed will likely result in no October inflation report, which will leave businesses, markets, families, and the Federal Reserve in disarray. Now, today's new Consumer Price Index report reveals inflation smashed market expectations once again in September, with prices holding steady and wages beating inflation as President Trump ushers in America into this new golden age. Now, unfortunately, the Democrats' shutdown risks grinding the progress to a halt. Now, surveyors cannot deploy to the field because the White House has learned there will likely not be an inflation release next month for the first time in history, depriving policymakers and marketers of critical data in the American economy. Now, here's what you need to know. Inflation has remained steady since President Trump took office, averaging just 2.5% compared to an average of 5% under the auto pen. Real private sector wages are on track to rise $1,151, or roughly 1.8% in the green since President Trump took office. Welcome relief after the private sector wages declined by $3,000 on average under the Biden administration. Now, gasoline prices are on track for an annualized drop of 7.5% since President Trump took office, reversing the average annual increase, at 7.7% under Biden. Gas prices have approached their lowest average levels in more than 4 years. And the 12-month change in overall shelter costs is at its lowest in 4 years. Costs are down for motor vehicle insurance, used cars and trucks, and communication commodities, propane, fresh fruits, non-prescription drugs, butter, adult apparel, and a host of other items, while egg prices are down 23.7% since President Trump took office. So all things going the right way. Even Bloomberg's Chris Abbey mentioning these readings will also bolster the Trump administration's argument that inflation is under control and tariffs are triggering a cost of living surge. So tariffs do work, unlike many in the legacy media claiming that it does not. Under President Trump, America is back, but inflation is not. Now, the Office of the First Lady also announcing plans of Halloween. So I took you through in the last hour President Trump's week, which will be an Indo-Pacific tour in Korea to Japan to Cambodia and Thailand, and ultimately meeting with the Chinese premier. All of these different leaders in the region regarding tariffs, trade, the global economy, and ultimately international security. But President Trump will make it back on time next Friday for the kiddos. It will be a Thursday celebration culminating into Friday evening at the White House to celebrate Halloween. On Thursday, October 30th, the First Lady, Melania Trump, and President Donald John Trump will open the South Lawn of the White House to trick-or-treaters of all ages. During this special White House tradition, thousands of children and their parents will proceed around the South Lawn to visit various trick-or-treat booths and enjoy the autumn decorations on the south portico of the White House. This event will take place from 4 o'clock in the evening to 8:30 and is open to ticket holders, including military families, law enforcement families, foster and adoptive families, and administration officials with children. So the President and the First Lady will hand out commemorative candies on the South Drive for a portion of the event. Adding to the festivities and fun, the United States Air Force Strolling Strings will play traditional traditional Halloween songs and modern tunes while the President and First Lady welcome children and families. A night to be remembered by all, clearly. So throughout the evening, the United States Postal Service will provide by-mail trucks and facilitate a Be Best postcard station for the kids. U.S. Department of Agriculture will have a giant pumpkin photo opportunity for American farmers. And the International Fresh Produce Association will provide Washington State apples, some delicious ones, in fact. Will provide sweet treats to trick-or-treaters. And the event will also feature participation in treats by America 250, the NASA administration, along with National Park Services, U.S. Mint, U.S. Secret Service, and White House Historical Association, and the Center of Science and Industry. Please note the Secret Service reserves the right to prohibit personal items, so make sure you take a look at those prohibited items before you go. secretservice.gov/prohibited items. The event will not be rescheduled if canceled due to inclement weather, but I'm sure it will be a beautiful autumn evening at the White House on Thursday, October 30th, thanks to the office of the First Lady. And to get rest before this big event, why not grab a MyPillow at mypillow.com/RSBN. But the 6-piece towel set, that's a big one, back in stock, normally going for $70. It's now under $40 at $39.98, very limited quantity. MyPillow.com/RSBN. Call today. Don't delay. 800-836-7566. Thank you to our friend Mike Lindell, the defender of free speech, purveyor of election integrity, and also a man who loves this great country of ours, all in the beautiful state of Minnesota. MyPillow.com/RSBN. Thank you for your sponsorship on the right side of history. We're roughly 10 minutes after the 11 o'clock hour on the East Coast. If you like what you see, please feel free to donate. RSBnetwork.com/donate or text RSBN to 801-801. And there you'll have prompts to contribute to your go-to live desk here in Auburn, Alabama. Heck, if you like the check or money order, the old school way of doing things, I totally get it. 1550-1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344. The loveliest village on the plains, Auburn, Alabama, 36830. 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344. Auburn, Alabama, 36830. That's our address. Thank you for supporting us on the right side of history as we take on a legacy media that is brutal at times, very anti-American. We'll always bring it to you forthright and go where the breadcrumbs lead as real citizen journalists looking to make a difference in this golden era. And as we look to 2026 and the midterm elections, we hope you'll be right here with us at Right Side Broadcasting Network as the leaves are changing around the White House to provide for a trip that will be consequential over the next week for President Trump as he'll return next week, leaving tonight for Malaysia and then back for Halloween festivities at the White House. I'm Robert McNeely. We'll take a quick commercial break for sponsorships here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, but do not change that dial on this Friday, October 24th, 2025. It's Right Side Broadcasting Network. You're on the right side of history.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You can scan that QR code now, RSBN10. That is the code, easy to remember, for 10% off. This is ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, antibiotics that will save you and yours from bacterial and viral infections, NAD+, and much, much more. 200 essential medications and emergency medical kits, the meds you trust delivered to your door. Welcome back to Right Side Broadcasting Network on this October 24th, 2025. In case you missed any of the latest news from the Trump White House, President Trump yesterday, with a drug cartel and law enforcement meeting at the White House with cut number 29, Mr. Producer, this brought together heads of law enforcement, whether it be military and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth to the Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, also DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, Stephen Miller, also Attorney General Pam Bondi, and FBI Director Kash Patel, just highlighting what's taking place in the federal government in regards to safety domestically and internationally, including DNI Director, the Department of National Intelligence, the good Secretary Tulsi Gabbard. But we can go to that clip if that is ready to launch.
And we're here today to discuss a sweeping, unprecedented, and historically successful operation that my administration has carried out in recent weeks to arrest, prosecute, and permanently remove members of foreign drug cartels from American soil. And the people gathered around this table are the ones that are doing it, and in this room. Some of them sitting a little bit behind. In fact, some of them, I'm surprised, are not actually at the table. You people should be very insulted by that. But you've done a great job back there. On my first day in office earlier this year, I signed an executive order to officially designate the drug cartels and savage transnational gangs as foreign terrorist organizations. It was my honor to do so. And on that same day, I also signed an order directing the creation of the Homeland Security Task Force to bring together all federal, state, and local partners to achieve the national policy goal of eliminating the cartel presence in America once and for all. And the results are, and it's early, and the results are spectacular. Led by ICE and the FBI, this task force includes the Department of Justice, the Department of War, DHS, the intelligence community, ATF, the DEA, the U.S. Marshals, and the state and local agencies in every part of our country. Other than that, we don't include too many people. That's a hell of a group, isn't it, huh? When you think of it, that's not a group you want against you. Certainly not at one time.
Thank you to allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN for your fall, flu, COVID, cold, the whole nine yards go-to with life-saving medication. That's not a luxury this day and age, but really pretty much you got to have it in your medicine cabinet, or at least to travel with as you enjoy the fall foliage throughout this gorgeous nation of ours, as we see Washington, D.C., with those autumn colors surrounding the White House. Get Tamiflu, ivermectin, antibiotics, much, much more from allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Scan that QR code there now. It's code RSBN10. Very easy to remember. If you don't have insurance, there's no issue. Just a pharmaceutical note, which you actually can obtain if you don't have a regular general practitioner with the great doctors and pharmacists right here at allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Here's the problem of this year. Lots of gatherings getting together for college football to weekends with the family. And the problem is that one kid or adult that comes home all of a sudden gets the whole house sick with cold and flu when you just think it's a quick little sniffles. Gosh, I heard him yesterday on the airplane, so I have a pretty tough immune system. There's no question about that, but I was definitely stocked up on my medications just in case. So if you have that with ivermectin, you could do the parasite cleanse. You can also have NAD plus dimethylene blue, which studies are showing actually not only help with sleep, but could curb dementia and Alzheimer's as the science continues to be researched there. And with all the urgent cares to different pharmacies and doctors' offices, they could be really a long line this time of year. So step ahead of all of it with allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN that believes in the right to try, that believes in the most favored nation status, as Health and Human Services in this administration has been very bold on over the course of this second term. But get ahead of it. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN is the go-to. No red tape, no bureaucracy, just pharmaceutical note and a phone call. Visit for life-saving medications that are affordable and get to your house rather quickly. QR code there for RSBN 10, the 10% off of allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. With the latest news from the Trump White House, President Trump on, or about to be on, that big Indo-Pacific tour of these nations that are friends, some foes, some challenges. He will meet with the prime ministers of Cambodia and Thailand, both kingdoms coming together in peace with tariff and trade deals with the United States. So we'll see those signings there to make it all official. Then to meet with the South Korean president and the new Japanese prime minister, who has issued deportation of all illegal aliens from the Japanese country. So we'll see all of that. In fact, President Trump will have that sit down ultimately with Xi Jinping, something much anticipated on a global scale. But right here at home, it is now day 24 of the lockdown. And Secretary Duffy, in case you missed it yesterday, joining House Speaker Mike Johnson in GOP leadership with cut number 28, Mr. Producer, regarding air traffic control and seeing some changes around the airports. Things are going smoothly. I'm happy to report from my last 2 days of being at Hartsfield Jackson and Chicago O'Hare that things are running relatively smoothly, but you can have some long lines, especially as we anticipate the Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays.
One other problem that I want to address that we're seeing now in the shutdown, you've seen that we don't have enough air traffic controllers. We're 2,000 or 3,000 air traffic controllers short. And so what I've done is I've developed a plan to supercharge air traffic controllers into our system. The president said, bring in the best and the brightest, young men and women to work in this space, which is what we've done. We've shortened the timeline from testing to get into to our facility where we train our air traffic controllers in Oklahoma City. Shorten the timeline, get the best and the brightest. The highest test scores come in first. And that's what we've done. It's going to be a multi-year process to make up the shortfall that we have in the system. But I'm getting word now from Oklahoma City, where I have young air traffic controller students who are now telling me, what the hell am I doing? Why am I going to take this job? They're thinking about leaving the academy, smart young men and women, because they don't want to work for a system that won't pay them, that doesn't guarantee them a paycheck. And their paychecks are at risk. We pay those controllers as they go through the academy. We don't pay them a lot of money either. They rely on that. And when that money doesn't come, it creates not just disruptions for when Democrats in the Senate decide to forego the crazy left and actually fight for America. That's problems that ricochet in the months and the years to come. And I think it's important that we tell that story because if we don't, I think that you can give the Democrats a pass. We have to talk about the real consequences of what this shutdown does, talk about who we're fighting for, and why this matters to, again, open up your government. Open it up. It's easy. And then sit down and negotiate. Have a conversation. But to allow the radical element in the Senate to hold America hostage, I think would be shameful. That's not how we operate.
It's not the way to operate, as the Secretary said. It's just really political pandering that is taking precedent over the health and the care of the American people. But we know that this is a pattern of far-left Democrats, as Press Secretary, the superstar, Caroline Leavitt, detailing it in her press conference yesterday. Did you know that illegal aliens have benefited from obtaining CDL licenses to illegal licenses with Cut 26, Mr. Producer, in California, over 60,000? I remember growing up and there was a huge license for bribe scandal that ended up putting a former governor, George Ryan, in prison as a result of a pastor's family literally being burned alive because an illegal alien driver of a truck. So a huge controversy in the late 90s. Back when he was Secretary of State of Illinois. That landed him in jail, the license for bribe scandal. But we know that Governor Gavin Newsom, he's a much better podcast host than he is a governor. We have that ready for you now.
Democrats are solely responsible for all of this unnecessary pain. Why are they doing it? to give taxpayer-funded healthcare benefits to illegal aliens, some of whom are violent criminals. During the 4 years of Joe Biden's administration, the Democrats forced Border Patrol to admit illegal aliens into our country with no legal status and minimal screening. A significant number of these individuals are the worst of the worst criminals: rapists, pedophiles, murderers, and even members of the terrorist watch list. Despite having no legal status, paroled aliens were able to file for work authorization, receive Social Security numbers, and access other benefits like Medicaid that are meant for Americans. Since I've found many in this room to repeatedly deny the reality that Democrats gave Medicaid benefits to illegals, and they continue to seek to do just that, I've brought a few verified examples for you today. These are examples of some of the illegals who received Medicaid benefits under President Biden's leadership, and this is what Democrats are wanting to do. This is why they are continuing to keep the government closed. An illegal alien from Laos was arrested for murder, robbery, and felony possession of a firearm. An illegal alien from Guatemala who was arrested for rape and burglary. An illegal alien from El Salvador who was arrested for strangulation, DUI, and burglary. An illegal alien from Mexico who was arrested for attempted murder. The Democrats' open border policies allowed these threats into our country, and then they provided them with free health care. The president and the Republicans, through the One Big Beautiful Bill, implemented a common sense reform to end this fraudulent scheme. But that's why the Democrats are continuing to shut down the federal government. They are trying to reverse this and restore taxpayer-funded health care for illegal aliens like these.
And Kalshi.com/RSBN, our go-to for Bitcoin predictions before March, February, January. Will it hit 150K? Will Andrew Cuomo become the next New York City mayor? The Democrat turned independent, a political comeback, not quite like President Trump's, but definitely up there in modern American history. What about the Los Angeles Dodgers? They start the World Series tonight against the Toronto Blue Jays. Will they repeat the championship as the Florida Panthers did in the National Hockey League with the Stanley Cup? We will watch all of that, and you could trade on those things at Kalshi.com/RSBN. So watch for that as we go into a further golden era with this great country of ours. AngelPaste.com as well. The miracle that is the vitamin B cream that I use on a daily basis. Non-GMO, no chemicals. Also the orange option for vitamin C as well, infused. Just fantastic options here at this great Christian-owned company. They hire veterans based out of Spring, Texas, off the Gulf of America. They also have a natural facial spray. So get out there, paint the town red, and cut a rug this weekend, if you will. You can do that all with AngelPaste.com, assisting you along the way. And guys out there, trust me, there's good products for you too at AngelPaste.com. It is just getting to the bottom of the hour here, 11:30. We cover everything on the Trump White House happening today. The president leaving for Malaysia later tonight. When he lands, it will be Sunday morning. So we look forward to that trip. We'll be covering it in depth over the course of the next week. President Trump meeting with Malaysian leaders, the prime ministers of Cambodia and Thailand, both of those kingdoms, also South Korea, Japan, and China. So it's really a whirlwind tour of the Indo-Pacific, and we will watch everything taking place there in tariff and trade negotiations to global and international security. With cut number 3, Mr. Producer, did you know, have you heard, the Democrats want an ICE tracker? How many more laws will they violate over the course of wanting to interfere with the Supremacy Clause, law enforcement, and ultimately the safety of our brave ICE agents? Caroline Levitt touching on this just yesterday. Number 30, please.
Putting the lives of our ICE agents at risk. We've seen media outlets, in fact, in this room, also write stories about ICE tracker apps that Democrats and other left-wing activists have created to track the location of ICE agents on the ground in our communities. Again, I've said this repeatedly, and I will continue to say it. The men and women of ICE are outstanding people. I wish a Democrat on Capitol Hill would actually have the courage or the guts to stand up to their party and sit down with some of these men and women who are doing this incredible incredibly difficult job of enforcing our federal immigration laws. They are, again, simply trying to enforce the law and do their jobs. And if Democrats spent a little bit more time understanding that and also focusing on the people who they are trying to get out of our country every single day. As I spoke about earlier, 3 innocent people in California are dead because an illegal alien who Democrats let into this country was wrongfully issued a trucker's driving license and clearly was not fit for the job because he was driving intoxicated and killed 3 innocent people. Democrats should focus a little bit more on that. Stop trying to fight this president and this administration on every turn and restore law and order. That's all that we and these brave men and women of ICE are trying to do.
Speaking truth to power yesterday in a rather fantastic press conference. When is it not, to be honest, with the superstar Caroline Leavitt, as President Trump puts it, one of the best press secretaries that has ever served at the White House. We covered the latest from the Trump White House and day 24 of this government lockdown. We'll take a quick commercial break for sponsorships here on the Right Side of History. Don't change that channel. It's Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You can scan that QR code now, RSBN10. That is the code, easy to remember, for 10% off. This is ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, antibiotics that will save you and yours from bacterial and viral infections, NAD+, and much, much more. 200 essential medications and emergency medical kits, the meds you trust delivered to your door. You might have remembered last week's No Kings protest that took place, which is really interesting to think because we do live in a constitutional republic, and even President Trump has been joking that if I was a king, I would not talk to Congress on this day 24 of the Senator Chuck Schumer shutdown. But our dear friend at the Blaze Media, Mr. Glenn Beck, really breaks down the connections. These aren't Republican talking points, but rather the connections of far-left communists and Democrat socialists and other far-left organizations trying to usurp the authority of a foundation of our very Republican form of government. Again, not the party, but the kind of government we do have in elected representatives. With cut number 19, Mr. Producer, Glenn really breaks down this connection to George Soros and ultimately a person who has attempted to destroy Western civilization.
If this movement is truly against billionaires and the powerful, why is it funded by billionaires and the powerful? This is not about dismantling power. This is about rearranging power. So according to several sources, including Fox News, George Soros and his Open Society Action Fund granted $3 million to Indivisible. Now, this is one of the primary organizers of the No Kings protest. Soros's larger network, the Open Society Foundation, gave over $7.6 million to the same operation. We're almost at $11 million, but Soros is not alone. If you follow the funding trail, it leads to, what a surprise, the Arabella Network. Now you add in the Bill Gates Foundation, or the Ford Foundation, or here's my favorite, the Rockefeller Network. There is now this organization funded by billionaires, Riots Inc. and it is the permanent protest industrial complex. These tactics were developed by the CIA, and they're called color revolutions. And what they do is they flood the streets with, quote, organic protesters. They control the media narrative. They destabilize the existing system, and then they overthrow that system and install a new one. It is part of a longer game. Once you convince free people that freedom itself is the problem, they'll beg for a change. And that's when the kings, the real kings, step out from behind the curtain. When there's an emergency for your own good, you have to remain inside. You're not an essential worker. You can only shop at Home Depot. That's the sign of a king. Kings, they don't have to wear crowns. Usually kings just sign checks. Sometimes they fund revolutions. They are the ones writing the script for the resistance, for their own power and kingdoms.
Oh, it's just a conspiracy theory. No, it's been proven true, and perhaps none other better than Glenn Beck to walk us through that. So it's more important than ever for new media, for the voices on the right side of history, the correct side of history, to ultimately speak up and to study these trends and to make sure this League of Shadows does not destroy this constitutional republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Glenn Beck and the Blaze Media and President Trump for sharing that important information to dive into all of these far left sources, as we thank covepure.com/RSBN. $200 off of the life-saving, health-improving Clearwave technology that removes 99.9% of the impurities out of the water. No question about it. They are the best that is out there. Remember those lead pipes from Flint, Michigan? You don't want that in your water. It could lead to cancers and real stomach problems, liver, kidney damage, even brain damage over the course of years. JAMA Pediatrics putting out a study with scientists and doctors stating that students can lose up to 2% of their IQ, if not more, if drinking from the tap regularly. So join Secretary Kennedy and the Make America Healthy Again movement in order to get the fluoride, pesticides, agricultural runoff, and all the bad stuff out of the water. And Utah and Florida, they introduced legislation to do just that, as we've seen Secretary Kennedy go across the country with governors who want to make America healthy again. Protect what matters most. Drink pure, live pure. It's $200 off of covepure.com/RSBN. Thank you to Perplexity as well, the web browser that is your personal assistant. AI-powered. Unlock 1 month of free Rumble Premium, which you might be streaming right now via this network. Browse at the speed of thought with Comet, pplx.ai/RSBN. Why waste all that time online searching, researching, going through scrolling, and it's endless at times, and it gets rather annoying. Why not just have that personal assistant book and manage reservations and take care of all of that unneeded extra work on your end? It is the AI-powered browser known as Comet through Perplexity, our newest sponsor here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, pplx.ai/RSBN. So you're meeting up with friends or family in a week or so, but you're on opposite ends of the coast. You're meeting halfway there. Why not look up the city of Chicago? Much safer now, thanks to ICE and federal agents. You want to go to that favorite Italian restaurant of yours, but you're not sure exactly which part of town. Allow this Comet to look it all up for you when in regards to safety, to timing, and it really, is it the best or is it just a bunch of hoopla? It could take care of that for you. Manage all the reservations, send it out to those in your party, and then you don't have to worry about it. So you can get your other tasks done throughout the day and throughout the week. pplx.ai/RSBN. Browse at the speed of thought with Comet, as we cover the latest from the Trump White House and the tariffs to federal funding to Downstream Awareness Month. Cut for Mr. Producer. President Trump able to spend time with Secretary Duffy's daughter, and she is just a lovely person to celebrate what is or Down Syndrome Month, Awareness Month, to all of the wonderful Down syndrome children in our country and their parents who love them so much. You are amazing. May God bless you. And they really are. They are balls of sunshine. If you remember the testimony, too, of that one gentleman during this month a few years ago, speaking on this very topic, saying, my life is amazing, and I love my life, and no one should choose to abort simply based on this condition. They are gifts from God. There's no question about it, and we see that with the Duffy family especially. So something to really look into, as President Trump is arguably the most pro-life president in at least modern American history, with what he wants to do in regards to putting pro-life justices and judges on the courts in record numbers. Ultimately, that led to the end of Roe v. Wade. And someone who's encouraging more births, more family, it's a national security issue. Secretary Kennedy put it, and why this government has really helped in the research and expansion of IVF treatments. And I know that people have very valid opinions on both sides of that, but it's such a tragedy to see when families cannot have children because of infertility, because of poisons in the environment. And this EPA, this Health and Human Services, all working overtime in order to make this a healthier country, but also a country that welcomes children. As this president continues to put up with countless nonsense, did you know that he does not take a salary for the job? It's amazing to me as he continues to give of his time, talent, and treasure in this second term, with cut number 21, Mr. Producer, talking about this very issue.
Yeah. Well, I also give, I give a lot of money to the White House. The White House is, as you know, I give my salary, and I usually like to steer it to the White House because this house was a little bit abandoned. First of all, for 4 years, you had a guy walking around that didn't know where the hell he was. And this house was not taken care of the way it was supposed to be. I take very good care of property. I was very good at that. And you'll notice the floors downstairs, I paid for them. Marble, the most beautiful marble you've ever seen. The white floors down in the palm room, which they look like they came out of, I don't want to lose because they're big supporters of mine, Home Depot. So I'm not going to say bad, but they did come out of a box from Home Depot about 30 years ago. They were all broken, but now they have the most beautiful floors, the most beautiful lights and chandeliers. I think most of you, Brian, you've seen that, right?
Yes.
How beautiful is that? And I take care of it. So I spend millions of dollars on this building, taking care of it. It was not properly maintained, and now it's starting to gleam like it should. It should really gleam, and you should go down and visit the Presidential Walk of Fame. Have you seen it? It's quite good. I'm sure that a lot of people coming to the White House, it's hot. It's very hot, but it's really a tribute to the presidents, past presidents of our country.
As part of that hearing or that presentation with press and that meeting at the White House, this was on crime and drug levels, and specifically domestic security and international security with those who know how to do it best, including FBI Director Kash Patel on fentanyl and how that's lowered in the drug trafficking and secure borders over the course of the last several months. With cut number 22, Mr. Producer, Kash Patel, the FBI Director, talking stats and facts to the President of the United States.
I think the media should focus on some of these numbers the Attorney General just riled off. Those aren't numbers, those are lives. Lives saved by the millions. Enough enough fentanyl to kill over 200 million Americans, gone, evaporated off our streets permanently. Your vision to safeguard American freedoms and our children and our future is the most courageous thing I've ever seen a president of the United States ever do. And your ability to marshal it out in 8 months, these statistics would have taken other administrations decades.
It's really remarkable the amount of time it's taken, a short period of time, in order to make America great again. And Stephen Miller touched on this as well, with the crime fighting taking place, which is in the legal purview of the executive office of the president. You might have some like Governor J.B. Pritzker who will go on other networks and riddle lies, as he did last night. But there's no question that crime is going down in this country as a result of federal intervention. And it's rare that even the Insurrection Act is discussed, let alone the use of National Guard or even federal agents. But when you have commanders in chief, mayors of these big cities who are completely ignoring their authority and not backing their police, and in fact instructing their chiefs, among other ranks, including their sergeants, to not work with ICE. Something has to be done, and it's all being done within a legal parameter, as Stephen Miller touches on with cut number 23.
Let me just say, Mr. President, that this country was going to die without you. This country was going to actually die without you. That's what we were facing in 2024. We've been invaded for 4 years. Our communities were sinking. Our public safety had gone to zero. Cartels were running entire communities. Sex trafficking, child trafficking, labor trafficking was out of control. Overdoses were out of control. The cartels were claiming more and more territory. City services were buckling. This was a country on the verge of dying, and you alone saved it. And when you stepped forward originally in 2016, you started the movement to make America great again. And that means make America great again in every way. And that means safety and prosperity and peace and freedom from cartels and crime and gangs. And your vision and your leadership in declaring war on the drug cartels is the single most successful public safety initiative in American history. And I need the media to understand what President Trump has done. People have been talking about drug cartels for longer than I've been alive. And everyone has just taken for granted that they can't be touched or stopped. They're too big, they're too powerful, they're too evil, they're too murderous. They can operate with impunity. And in just 9 months, President Trump is the only American leader, not just in our lifetimes, but ever, to actually take the fight to the drug cartels, to actually seek their eradication. And it is happening. And so while the Democrats are shutting the government down and fighting for free health care for illegal aliens, look at what President Trump has assembled here. He's assembled a team under his vision, direction, and leadership that is saving hundreds of thousands of lives. Hundreds of thousands of lives. And only President Trump could have done this. And I will say one last thing, which is that his courage has been an inspiration to everyone else in this room. There are people in this room, looking at, for example, at Todd Lyons, who have been relentlessly doxxed and harassed and threatened. But when they see President Trump's courage, what he's been through for 10 years to save America, when they came after his family, his businesses, his safety, his freedom, everyone at this table knows we can give whatever it takes to get the mission done. So President Trump, thank you for your leadership, your boldness, your courage, and your vision. We're honored to serve underneath you.
Thank you to mypillow.com/RSBN for sponsoring us here on the right side of history. The 6-piece towel set back in stock, normally going for $70, now under $40. $39.98, a very limited quantity. 800-836-7566. Support Mike Lindell and Right Side Broadcasting Network. Shop now. Easy to remember the code RSBN, the master marketer, as President Trump puts it. Speaking of Mr. Mike Lindell, a good friend of the network and someone who has boldly and courageously lived an inspiration to countless people, not only in their own faith journeys, but in defending this constitutional republic, all while being a humble man serving our Lord and Savior in the best way he knows how, getting you exquisite, good products for an affordable price, all made here in America. And I can tell you, I'm a big fan of mypillow.com/RSBN. You can find over 2,000 products on that website, and they're all extraordinary. Personal favorites, the original MyPillow to the My Coffee in the morning, one of the best out there, free and fair traded coffee. Also, the My Slippers, very comfy to have this time of year. It's mypillow.com/RSBN. And if you'd like to donate, please join us in the new media movement that is telling the truth, that is really going up against a legacy media that sometimes chooses to be anti-American. Sad, but be not afraid. We are here to love and serve you, the good people of this amazing country. RSBnetwork.com/donate. You can text RSBN to 801-801 or send a cash money order check, whatever you'd like, to 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344. The loveliest village on the plains, that's 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344, Auburn, Alabama, 36830. Thank you for supporting us here on the right side of history as we continue coverage in the latest from the Trump White House on day 24. Oh my goodness, this government lockdown that is on happens to be October 24th, 2025. With cut number 24, Mr. Producer, Department of National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard on the cartels and how they've really been eliminated and pushed back upon justice being served under this administration.
Mr. President, under your leadership, for the first time, there is a newly created National Intelligence Fusion Cell at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, National Counterterrorism, that has a very simple purpose: to make sure that we have two-way intelligence sharing of actionable information between the intelligence community and law enforcement. I want to talk briefly about three successes that we've had just here in the last few weeks, Mr. President, through the success of this interagency fusion cell. Just this last week, our National Counterterrorism Center supported, through actionable intelligence to both U.S. law enforcement as well as Mexican law enforcement, the arrest of a Sinaloa cartel boss, El Plato, in Juarez, Mexico, as well as his top three money launderers. In a separate and recent successful interagency operation, NCTC worked closely with the U.S. Marshals Service that led to the arrest of another dangerous Sinaloa cartel member responsible for tracking a huge amounts of cocaine and hundreds of thousands of dollars in this single incident with drug proceeds through his network. And I'll say the last example I'll share is probably the most insidious, was providing intelligence to the Mexican law enforcement that led to the arrest of a CJNG cartel-affiliated baby trafficker called La Diabla. Her whole money-making operation was centered around luring pregnant women, performing illegal C-sections, harvesting organs, and selling newborn babies. Mr. President, it's your leadership that has made all of this possible.
If nothing else turns your stomach more, it's this trafficking issue. The fact that that's not, again, a conspiracy theory that has happened. This government has found it happening. And sadly, whether it was HHS or the ICE enforcement to what took place under the Biden administration under Alejandro Mayorkas, trafficking ran rampant throughout the United States, coming from all over the world. It's disgraceful, and they definitely have blood on their hands as a result. And we know it to be fact now of these trafficking of human organs to child sacrifice. It's really disgusting. And the sex trafficking that's happened, it's a tough topic, but it's one we must be aware of, as your vote matters. For those that really say that too, if you have friends, if you have neighbors, and you always treat them with charity, but it behooves them to be involved in this MAGA movement, because it's a big tent movement. It's one that's brought in countless different people, and Republicans, Democrats, the conservatives, and liberals. It's the America First Party. That's what it really is. It's about sovereignty at home and an America First standard across the world, which ends up bringing more peace to millions of lives. With 8 wars solved in 8 months, now number 9, right on the cusp with Russia and Ukraine. President Trump, though, canceling that meeting based on recent actions by the Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, with the recent strike on the kindergarten by drones. So we'll see how that complicated issue gets solved, as the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky last week at the White House last Friday with President Trump, pointing to moments of hope and optimism, as there is somewhat of a light at the end of the tunnel. They don't share a lot from their specific meetings, granted. The subject matter, very, very important. In some cases, might be classified as well. So we'll keep on that story as Russia and Ukraine, God willing, seek peace, especially the people who have suffered so much at the hands of the Russian invasion, and specifically Vladimir Putin in Russia. Now, why does this all matter? It's where your vote is. And as we played in the first hour, we can play again with cut number 20, Mr. Producer, the mail-in ballot issue. Our dear friend asking about that very issue in the Oval Office this week, and why that matters ultimately, because we know that 81 million votes, did that really happen? See what President Trump has to say about it.
You pushed out on social media about doing away with mail-in ballots and potentially electronic voting machines. Can you expand on that? How?
Well, that's a very off topic, just really quickly. Mail-in ballots are corrupt. Mail-in ballots, you can never have a real democracy with mail-in ballots. And we, as a Republican Party, are going to do everything possible that we get rid of mail-in ballots. We're going to start with an executive order that's being written right now by the best lawyers in the country to end mail-in ballots because they're corrupt. And you know that we're the only country in the world, I believe, I may be wrong, but just about the only country in the world that uses them because of what's happened. Massive fraud all over the place. The other thing we want change are the machines. For all of the money they spend, it's approximately 10 times more expensive than paper ballots. And paper ballots are very sophisticated with the watermark paper and everything else. We would get secure elections. We'd get much faster results. The machines, I mean, they say we're going to have the results in 2 weeks. With paper ballots, you have the results that night. Most people, many countries use paper ballots. It's the most secure form. So between paper ballots, very, very important, paper ballots, and I think maybe even more important, the mail-in voting. We're going to end mail-in voting. It's a fraud. If you have mail-in vote, even Jimmy Carter with this commission, they set it up. He said the one thing about mail-in voting, you will never have an honest election if you have mail-in. And it's time that the Republicans get tough and stop it because the Democrats want it. It's the only way they can get elected. Because with men and women's sports and with transgender for everybody and open borders and all of the horrible things, and now the new thing is they love crime. They're fighting me on the fact that I've made Washington, D.C. safe. We're not going to get mugged, beaten up, or killed like all the people you've been watching get so badly hurt. I'm glad, I hate to take your time with this, but I'm glad you asked me that question. We're going to stop mail-in ballots because it's corrupt. You know, when you go to a voting booth and you do it the right way and you go to a state that runs it properly, you go in, they even ask me, they asked me for my license plate, for identity. I said, I don't know if I have it. He said, sir, you have to have it. I was very impressed, actually. But it's very hard to cheat with mail-in voting. As you know what happens in California, it's so corrupt, where some people get 5, 6, 7 ballots delivered to them. Now, we got to stop mail-in voting, and the Republicans have to lead the charge. The Democrats want it because they have horrible policy. If you have mail-in voting, you're not going to have many Democrats get elected. That's bigger than anything having to do with redistricting, believe me. And the Republicans have to get smart. We're not going to have a country. I said for a long time at rallies, you need borders and you need free and fair elections. Those two things. Otherwise, you don't have. We have strong borders now. In 90 days, Mr. President, we didn't have 0 in 3 months. Not one person came in illegally into our country. In fact, even I find that hard to believe, but it's run by a little bit of a liberal group that put out the numbers, so I guess it's, but 0, 0, and 0. You go back a year ago, 2 years ago, 3, millions of people poured into our country. It was terrible. Thank you very much.
Being involved in the process and making sure it's a fair process can literally mean the saving of thousands to millions of lives, as we've seen between the Auto Pen administration and now the second Trump term, with cut number 17, Mr. Producer, being shared by President Trump. Asked former President Barack Hussein Obama whether or not he really believes that in 2020 Joe Biden got 15 million votes more than he did in 2012. 65.9 million roughly versus 81 million. It's ballot harvesting that we've seen on a grand scale from California throughout the entire country. Additionally, ask him why that is that Joe Biden beat Obama in every single swing state with a black vote in 2020, even though black voters hate him but in no other state. The 2020 election was an illegal scam and a hoax that people of our great country will never forget, according to President Trump, and we are righting those wrongs as we speak. At roughly 11:58 on the East Coast. It's about 9 o'clock on the West Coast. Thank you for joining us this morning as we thank allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. It's Tamiflu, it's ivermectin, antibiotics, and much, much more. Use code RSBN10. Scan that QR code now. That's a problem with this time of year. Really not a luxury, but required, it should be, to have your medicine cabinet stocked. You can take all these medications on the road with you to protect you from what might be the ailments out there, from COVID to flu to the common cold as well. I mean, there's so much out there. Is allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN to protect you with urgent cares and pharmacies and doctor's offices, long lines out the door. It's these life-saving medications that can make a big difference, and they are online. They are in real time, affordable generics that the big pharmacies don't make a lot of money off of, so sometimes will refuse to sell them as a result. Ivermectin for those parasite cleanses, NAD+, methylene blue for sleep, even to curb dementia and Alzheimer's, as science is finding. There are over 200 essential medications, including emergency medical kits, right there and available for you at allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Thank you to Monetary Gold as well for wealth and preservation. Security as well. Grab that presidential gold guide because the banks fail to this year alone. So call today. Do not delay. 888-617-7994. Ask how you can eliminate those IRA fees permanently and for life. Do not let those things curb you from gold and silver in a bull market right now at RSBN for thegold.com. Really the go-to right now to find about diversification and investments and savings of everything you worked hard for in your retirement, whether it's generational wealth or buying that first or second property. Monetary Gold can help with all of that. Thank you for sponsoring us on the right side of history. As we say goodbye to you today, a big birthday shout out to my brother from another mother, Ross Keller, right there, 26 years young. You might recognize these guys around us. It's Big Time Rush. We enjoyed that this summer up in Alpharetta, Georgia on their tour. And James Maslow, right to the right of Ross there on your left, a big, outspoken supporter of the Israeli people and what happened, and really someone who has been very vocal on peace. And it's nice to have artists out there that focus on peace in the world, especially in the Middle East, as we've seen that success over the last week and a half with this new Gaza peace plan signed in Egypt, as President Trump traveled to Israel and Egypt and was greeted by countless world leaders shaking his hand and wanting personal pictures with him. Well, we got a personal picture with the one and only Big Time Rush. So ladies, eat your hearts out because these guys are awesome. And then they put on a great show. And if you have a chance to see them, you might remember their show from way back in the day. But their music, quite entertaining, and they really do put on one of the best shows out there. But again, happy birthday to my dear friend Ross Keller. You saw his brother Adam on the show back on The Voice of Reason a few weeks ago, breaking down all that fantasy football. I'm very blessed to have dear friends, and they're more like brothers, actually, really family to me. My brother from another mother, Ross Keller. Happy birthday to you, my friend. And Hootie Who, a big shout out to Kennesaw State University. As we are breaking down the latest news from the Trump White House, we are always there for you for America First updates here at the network. It's Right Side Broadcasting Network, your go-to rally network. Over the last 10 years, we've turned into a live desk for you to keep up to date with the government you put into place back on November 5th of last year. The 45th and 47th President of the United States heading to Asia, to Malaysia specifically. He'll land on Sunday morning, their time. It's a long trip, and we'll cover the next week of the Indo-Pacific meetings with countless Asian countries to bring about tariffs, prosperity, and ultimately global security. Catch your 50th Vice President here in the 119th Congress, now in 24th day of government shutdown. We'll watch all of that for you as we bid you adieu this now afternoon at 12:02 Eastern. God bless you and God bless yours. I'm Robert McNeely. For all of my colleagues here on the right side of history, it's RSBN's Live Desk. We will see you very soon. Have a wonderful weekend.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You can scan that QR code now, RSBN10. That is the code, easy to remember, for 10% off. This is ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, antibiotics that will save you and yours from bacterial and viral infections, NAD+, and much, much more. 200 essential medications and emergency medical kits, the meds you trust delivered to your door.